Reyes.
And I'm Rick Macias.
And for now, we are
Un Poquito.
Podcast. Un Poquito Podcast. Exploring Latin culture little by little. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on the bell notification, leave a comment. As Dominic says, comments make you sexy. I say you're already sexy, but we'll disagree for now. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you get your audio podcast, make sure to follow us there. Leave a like, leave a rating, 5 stars, please. If you're looking to follow and support us, you can follow us on all platforms: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube at Un Poquito Pod, and email us at unpoquitopod@gmail.com. I read pretty much all of them right now, but Dominic reads them too. And also, if you're looking to support us, we have a Patreon. It starts as low as $2 a month, and you get access to bonus content, exclusive Patreon episodes, and early access to ad-free content. So be sure to check it out. Also, that actually reminds me, if you're wondering why there's a giant balloon penguin in the background, to follow the Patreon to find out, baby. Yeah. I've been doing balloon tutorials. Anyway, welcome back, Ricky Macias, our guest host for the time being. How you doing?
Doing good. Had a little busy day. I picked up some masa from my family. We got 20 pounds of masa to make some tamales.
Now, here's where the debate comes in. Is that enough?
That's immediately was a question when I brought it to my sister's house. So I don't think it was enough when I dropped it off.
What's 20 pounds of masa look like? Like, use your hands.
It's like this big.
Okay, you need like 2 more bags, dog.
Yeah, probably.
That's like immediately. That's like what I thought of when my mom makes the mas. She's like,
and it's just for you guys.
She'll always buy one, or the last time, like she bought one, and she's like, I'm gonna need more. And then like by the end of the week, it's because they were selling out, so she got like what she could, and then, or no, let me correct it. I was in charge of getting the masa for her because she was like handling stuff at the time. Oh yeah. And I was like, this is a lot of masa. And then we came on, she's like, you need like 2 more bags in this. Damn. So we went back the next day.
And that's the problem with trusting other people in your family for big important traditions. It's like
that's always a thing when it comes to cooking. Is
it's just gonna have to happen.
You gotta find the little. Nobody ever explains the rules to you. You have to figure it out. You know, like, but so it's funny because I come up with little tricks. Like, so I have something that's known as dyspraxia. It's a side effect of autism. Essentially, actually, it's a side effect of me being blind in my right eye. Essentially, I have issues with depth perception, and so I'm a naturally clumsy person. Because of that, people didn't really trust me in the kitchen when I was a kid, and so to gain people's trust as I got older, because I liked learning how to cook, the first thing that I did, and this is a tip I give to anyone that wants like specifically like Mexican mothers and grandmothers to trust you in the kitchen, learn to make pico de gallo. Because it's such a simple recipe, but it requires the most knife work. And that's how you gain someone's trust. It's a subconscious thing. If you know that, if you look like you're good with knives, they'll trust you with anything. Except masa, apparently.
And switchblades. That's cool. If you can make good pico, that's critical. Like, not just knife work. If you can make it taste good, anyone could throw cilantro, onions, and tomatoes in a bowl.
So it's we just do the recipe. It's half a white onion with 2 tomatoes, the juice of 2 limes, salt, pepper, small half bunch of chopped cilantro, and if you like spice, 1 whole jalapeno.
Damn.
Dice that shit.
I already want to eat it.
I do too. But that's for reasons that I can't say on YouTube because we're monetized.
Oh, fair.
If you want to find out, join the Patreon already. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Imagine. I just get madder and madder.
It's just all your recipes. That's all the Patreon is.
But that kind of goes, that whole idea of like dealing with the nuances and rules of a Latino family kind of segues into what we're talking about today. But we're talking about we've done a few different episodes about mental health at this point, but specifically today, the topic is more about generational trauma and kind of navigating the nuances of dealing with your Latino family. Kind of goes in hand with what we're talking about today, which is about mental health and specifically like the stigma that the Latino community has with mental health, and kind of like how that affects generational trauma and how you like break out of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it's I know this is a big thing. We just talked about it before off the podcast, but that's kind of a big thing with you right now in your personal journey, right? Is like
yeah, because like for those of you that watched last time, I'm pretty sure I mentioned I'm number 8 out of 10 kids.
Right.
My parents are from Mexico, and so were two of my siblings, and the rest of us were born here. But there's just trauma and pain in the Latino community in general. I've even heard like other Latinos specifically say like Mexicans are traumatized specifically.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that before.
And I was like, oh, you guys aren't as messed up as us inherently? Okay. But it's just pain. And, if you look at it that way, like, our experience is unique in the ways it's unique, but it's also everyone's pain is still pain, and we all have to process it. But like you said, it just has to be navigated a bit differently at times.
Yeah, because it's always, I feel like as a Latino, there's always your personal journey and then your journey within your community.
Yeah.
Like
Your community and your family. Because it's like, if you have the typical experience to any degree, you're pretty close with your family and or connected. Even if you're not close, you are still connected. And there's a lot of decisions to be made with each other.
Right.
And it's like, there's a lot of things to figure out. And that conflicts. And that has to do a lot with generational trauma, because you can't make clear decisions without communicating properly and things.
Yeah.
So it all you have to navigate it all, because if you haven't faced anything as a person or in your family as a whole, there's a lot of things to bump into.
Yeah, and I do think there's an aspect of that that's kind of unacknowledged but inherent.
Yeah.
In like the sort of journey that Latinos have had, especially like families and generations of families that were in Mexico and then like moved to America over the last like 100 years. And it's this thing of like a lot of the issues that a lot of the issues with identity stem from them just like having to acclimate. And so it's this trickling down mentality of like anything that stands out in any form and isn't immediately accepted is bad, like outright.
Absolutely. That was what I was taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like it reminds me of like, you've seen Encanto, right?
Yes.
That's a huge theme with Encanto is generational trauma.
Yeah.
But I feel like the most untalked about concept, I feel like the most traumatized sibling of that entire family is the mom. Not the grandmother, the mom of the main character.
Oh, I see. Like she just has to peacekeep everything.
Yeah, because you watch her the entire movie, there's never a negative moment with her. The only sad moment is when she's looking for her daughter. She's smiling in every other scene. She the journey is always between Maribela and her father when it comes to like feeling like an outsider, because the mom is like just naturally accepted, she's and there's this like weird pressure that I don't think is acknowledged, but it is in some way subconsciously implicated. Like she's the only one that's power is accepted because it's immediately helpful, and because of that, like she doesn't have to deal with the stigma that Bruno. She definitely doesn't have to deal with the stuff Bruno deals with, but more specifically, like it explains why Peppa is the way she is.
Yeah,
that's her name, right?
I think it's Peppa.
Yeah, the one with the like
the storm.
It's helpful when it's not disruptive, and when it's disruptive, the mother acts disappointed, and you don't get that with Maribela's mom. I should know her name. I keep forgetting.
Maribela's mom. I forget the mom's name, but yeah, it's interesting because of course those are all like those are all roles in the family.
Exactly.
And there's the way they portray it is a little unique and different, and your families are gonna operate a little differently.
Right.
But those roles will be fulfilled to some extent. Some people will be kind of multiple roles or one, or and people relate in different ways. But I saw those. I saw those parallels in my family. Definitely.
Yeah, it was such a funny thing when that movie came out because it's so all of the character. It's based in Colombia.
Yeah.
And they made a point to like be authentic about it. Like all of the only Latino that wasn't either born in or at least like coming from, like that's where his family from, was Lin-Manuel Miranda, I think. Because isn't he like...
I think so. He's Puerto Rican?
I believe he's Puerto Rican. He might be like half Colombian. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If you feel free to correct me in the comments. But everyone else that was hired, down to like John Leguizamo, were all either like directly from Colombia or their family was from Colombia.
Really?
And the reason I bring that up is because regardless of where you were from, that movie hit like in every Latino
I even have a
community.
joke about it because it hit hard.
Right.
Like it felt like an attack on our pain, on our issues.
Right.
It was still a beautiful movie. Like we all didn't watch it together, but we all wept when we watched the movie. Yeah.
I saw like I saw it opening weekend and it was packed. This was like when COVID rules were still a thing.
Yeah.
So as much as you could fill it, it was absolutely sold out.
Yeah.
And it was even like it was all Mexicans when I went, but my favorite part was like these two like teenagers, like they had to be like 17 and maybe 20, brought their like 90-year-old grandfather to the movie. And the reason that's so funny is because for the most part, he enjoyed the film. He like, it hit him.
Yeah.
But there was a moment where it hit him a little too hard, and he couldn't accept it, which was when she has the fight with her grandmother. Uh-huh. He walked out at that moment.
Really?
He's like, Maribel is doing too much. Yeah. He couldn't help it. He put so many walls, 80 years of putting up walls to this shit. He couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
He had to walk out, and his grandkids had to like reel him back in, like, this is how it is.
If you're not going to go to therapy, watch this.
Yeah. This was the closest a lot of Latinos came to doing therapy for the first time. It was so funny.
Yeah, because it's like there is a lot of pain to face, but there's a lot of beauty and all that jazz. And we can get there too. But this is what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And you can't enjoy the beauty of what we have if you don't face any of that. And it's rough. It's hard. Like I made a joke on one of the last episodes about like facing a lot of pain, and I still have more to face, blah blah, and so does my family, but we're doing it. And in a way I feel really lucky because we're such a big family, and a lot of us are making the effort regardless of our progress.
Right.
And I feel pretty lucky personally that that's something we're all most of us are doing.
Yeah, I feel like that's a growing thing with the younger generation, of like creating that environment to grow.
Yeah.
It's definitely like increased a lot more over the last, I want to say like specifically like the last decade.
Yeah.
I've never known so many Latinos going to therapy at once.
Yeah, I was the first one, as far as I'm aware, in my family to go to therapy.
Right.
I was about 23, 24 maybe. And it was like partly because I didn't want to talk about it. But it was like hushed conversations at first of like, oh, like Ricky's going to therapy.
Yeah, because that was always the thing, and that's how they like that's what kept people from going, was like I remember a family member telling me there's only two reasons you go to therapy: because you have to, which means there's something wrong with you, or because you have too much money on your hands and you need to find problems.
Yeah.
That was what like the said.
I'm aware.
And it was a hard thing to like contemplate, because that's something I always maintain is like my mom when I was at a young age actually like strived to I saw it in her when we were younger that she wanted to like break that cycle, and like
Yeah.
she had reached a point at her job where she could afford to do those things for us, and so she wanted to utilize those resources.
That's so huge.
She tried to put us in extracurriculars. She tried to put us in Spanish class, which didn't work, but not because she didn't try hard enough. It's because I didn't want to. We made it very hard for her. But she also like tried to put us in therapy, and at the time, that was like the most that I feel like a lot of people could have done is just like tried to go in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's so much that people, there's still so much that we had to learn about the process of like going to therapy, because you don't just like go and then the journey starts. You have to like, this is something I didn't find out until high school, like when I was trying to find a therapist, is you have to like try them out. You know what I mean? That's the thing that's like I didn't realize at the time when I was I was 7, is like just like any other field, people can be bad at their jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
Or it could be like a bad match. Like he doesn't talk how you think, and that can be and the other thing is like, this is something that I've actually had to explain to a lot of males in my family, specifically like on my dad's side, is there's a misconception about what therapy is.
Yeah.
You don't go there so that they give you answers. They help you learn the skills to give yourself the answers.
Yeah. Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, like the point isn't for them, you tell them a problem and they tell you the best way to handle it. You tell them something that you're struggling with, and they help you break down why it's a struggle and what parts of it are affecting you and where that comes from, so that you can figure out on your own the best way to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So that's like the thing is like, it's actually teaching you to be better at helping yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's, yeah, because ultimately in anything you do, like, and we talk about this, like, I talk about this a lot in comedy specifically, is like, eventually you have to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And that's in every part of your life. Eventually you have to trust yourself that you could figure things out, and it's not about being perfect. It's that you can move forward.
Right.
Despite not being perfect.
Right.
And it's a big deal, because like the average person struggles with it. Most people do. But that's not the problem. The problem is not moving forward. And it's okay to regress and not be perfect and not be good at it all the time. But the point is that you can make moves forward.
Yeah.
And you can face things. And yeah.
And I do want to say something like that. This is more directed towards the people that all this already makes sense to you out the gate. Is for those other people, if you can get them to get to a point where they're at least willing to try, the thing that you have to have, if this is the path you choose for yourself and for your relationship with those people, is patience. It's a lot of, they have to unlearn things before they can learn new things. And separate from that, they just like need the time to fully understand certain concepts. Like even like I said about explaining therapy to like my father, we've talked about it more than once.
Yeah.
And he on the whole like is starting to understand what I'm saying. When I break it down in a case by case scenario, he gets it. But as a concept, there's still this nagging thought in the back of his head that somehow going to therapy is admitting you can't do it yourself.
Yeah. And it's like it's such an interesting like conflict in our community, because it's like we want to feel capable and we want to feel strong or whatever, or that we can provide, at least men, but it's like what part of our culture insinuates that we never help each other? Right. And it's like there's like a cognitive dissonance of like, I don't need help, but also we always help each other. And it's like, do we not see that conflict in ourselves?
Yeah, that becomes a huge thing too, especially like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you're the person that needs help, that becomes a constant, like, you can't take the time to work on yourself because that's time you're taking away from family, and family comes first.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you just have to function.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way, for a lot of, especially older generation Latinos, that's the only way you can move forward is just to function. And it honestly, it's not frustrating in the sense of like you wish they would just click in their heads. It's more disappointing. Like it hurts to see someone and you like know why they're struggling so hard, but you can't figure out how to get them to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you can't, and I think that ties into one of the questions I saw on the Discord
Right.
about like, I forget exactly the details, but in the Discord, there's a question about someone's father that I believe got deported. This also ties into like undocumented
Right.
status and immigration. And I believe they said their father got deported and for multiple times got drunk driving and was banned from the country.
Right.
And they said, how do you help them? And that is going to be something that happens in our families. We're not all going to be lucky to have someone face their pain.
Right.
Or heal or fix things before it's too late.
Yeah. A lot of it has to do with it always has to start with a personal journey, and unfortunately sometimes people will reach a moment before you realize that they need help where not that they're beyond help, but that it's like they would have needed to see that so much earlier to prevent this from ever happening.
Yeah.
It's like a thing of like, you know, if you didn't want to reach this point, there were so many more moments beforehand where you could have addressed it. Not the person trying to help, but the person that is in need of help.
In need of help. You can't, the whole lead a horse to water, can't make him drink. But it's like we always, and this is a part of our community. Like we deal with this a lot. We always feel like we could have helped or that we're responsible to our families. Sometimes too much. And sometimes specifically to our parents. And they've sacrificed a lot sometimes, and we feel indebted, and we feel very lucky. And sometimes we feel almost undeserving, but that's their job.
Right.
Their job was to give you the best they could. And it's not necessarily your job to fix them because they helped you.
Right.
You could support them, but it's not just a parent. You could support people, but you can't keep suffering the consequences with them sometimes.
Right.
And it's okay to have boundaries, and it's okay to support them when they're ready.
Yeah, and that also goes into like, this is definitely something that I've mentioned before in regards to my autism, but there's parallels to it where as an autistic person, I've had to come to the understanding that it isn't other people's job to accommodate the fact that I'm autistic. There's things that I do for myself, and there's things that sometimes I need help with, but that doesn't mean that it's everybody's obligation to accommodate me into their life. Conversely, I exist with the understanding that if I am to interact with another person, certain things need to be recognized. I still have to be observed so just like that person doesn't have to accept accommodating me to have me in their life, I don't have to choose to remain in their life.
Correct.
If they're unwilling to at least recognize that that's a part of me existing.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a hard thing to overcome sometimes, because you never want to you never wish like harm towards that other person. You don't want bad things to happen for them, but if the paths that are necessary to move past that aren't being like observed, then there's nothing you can do but choose to go through those paths by yourself, like without them.
And also find people that are doing what you're doing. It's not always going to be family. And some of us desperately want that to be the case. And some of us will have that. And some of us will have probably a mixture of it. Some people in your family will make those changes, and some people may never. And we have to accept all of that. But you could also find community with people like you that do those things. And you're more likely to find those people if you do those things, because that will be recognized.
Yeah, and it's also, as much as everyone wants like that idealistic version of a family, this isn't to say that you have to completely cut off people that are
Right.
unwilling to, but it is a thing to like understand that relationships evolve, relationships change, and they change based on what's acceptable between the two parties.
Yeah.
Like a particular example that I'll use, and it's a little bit personal, is my relationship with my father. My father was not a bad like dad. He definitely did his best to be in my life. But because of circumstances that existed before I was born, he was not in a large part of it consistently. And because of that, we have a rapport between us that isn't exactly how you would expect between a father and son.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Like, I love my dad and we get along, but you know, our relationship is evolved because it's had to accommodate that change in dynamic. You know, he's still my biological father, but he's, you know, I didn't grow up with him like in my household every single day. You know what I mean? So we choose to interact with each other. I'm in his life right now. We live together right now, but that's, you know, it's not like I'd been living there the whole time. This is something relatively new to us, and so even now our relationship is evolving, because now, even though we didn't have that while I was growing up, now we have the opportunity to have a relationship as two adults that are living together.
And that's something I wasn't consciously thinking about talking about, but that is a very key and important thing to bring up, because sometimes you're going through all of this, like acknowledging pain, acknowledging like trying to face generational trauma, and you see the moment you're in, that your family's in, and it just seems insurmountable. And you, like Ryan mentioned earlier, like wanting this ideal of what we're supposed to be, right? We have these ideas of what we say our families are, or what we're told Latino or Mexican families are. And then we also see the reality of where we are. And those conflict, and those are hard to face.
Right.
But long term, like you're saying, these things will change, and sometimes in ways that you never would have predicted, and also in positive ways.
Right.
And it may not be what you thought you deserved, wanted, or needed when you were younger, but it might be exactly what you need when you're older. 5 years, a year, 10 years. Those things could be very like special. Yeah.
The only thing I think is still an issue between us is he doesn't think boys should cry still.
Oh, really?
But it's fun to have that.
Just a big The Cure fan, huh?
It's a fun debate to have with my father, because no matter how deep we get into it, I can always win by saying, okay, let's watch Braveheart right now. I guarantee you, every single time he yells freedom, my dad sheds a tear.
William Wallace will make a lot of men cry.
All the men
cry. Yeah, so it's like,
if you're above the age of 27 and you've seen Braveheart, think of that scene right now of him yelling freedom. He looks into the crowd and he sees his dead wife and he accepts what's happening. And even in his final moment, he does not give in to the oppression that he's facing. And with his very last breath in this world, he yells freedom.
But also,
now, here's a tissue, you whiny. But I'm just kidding. Imagine I just roast all of our male audience.
But also think about that scene where they moon everybody on the enemy side and they get arrows in the butt. I think that's one of my favorite scenes in any movie.
Because I think to make that movie, like they do, some of them do have to get hit with fake arrows. But I remember seeing one guy go, "Oh!"
Right into freedom. Yeah, so it's like they're yeah, I'm wondering if there's other questions that I kind of missed.
Hello, I just wanted to take a moment to shout out our sponsor, LegacyTeasAndSpices.com. It's a shop run by our mother, Angel Lamezcua, and it's a great source for teas, spices, and even sugars. We also just introduced a lot of great new flavors, including Frita Cola, Cafe con Leche, and Chicano Chai. So be sure to check those out and use coupon code UP20 on your next purchase to get 20% off.
This is from Sugar Honey Iced Tea. As a Latina who struggled with telling my own family about my mental health struggles, what tips would you have on navigating that conversation?
That is a tough one.
That is tough. That is tough. I feel like I'm the one that should answer.
I mean, I have an answer.
You have
but
go
yeah,
for
you
it. Go for it.
Well, because again, a lot of mine relates specifically to like explaining what autism is to my family, which is a thing that I can go into. I don't have to right now, but maybe after you give your answer.
Yeah.
One thing I say is definitely case by case. I will say, because this is how I handle talking to anyone who knows that I'm autistic and is affected by that when we talk, is as long as they're actually open and willing to have a conversation, explain it as best you can. And at the end of it, if they still don't agree or if there's still something confusing about it, the best thing I could recommend personally is if you know the resources, send that to them and say like, look, if there isn't a way where I can explain it where you understand, then all I can say is like, you can check these resources out and look into it for yourself. And maybe we can come back later. Otherwise, I think at this point, all we can say is that right now we disagree. That's like the best case scenario of a worst case scenario. The absolute worst case scenario is like, as I said before, like if they're just unwilling to recognize that, if they just actively choose not to want to change that, then that's up to you to decide if that person, if you two are willing to have a relationship beyond that. You know what I mean? And if that means that maybe you stay in each other's lives, but you're not as close, then that's what that means for the future. If that's the best path for you two together.
I think that's a really good answer. That's a very good, clear way to communicate and giving them the options to proceed or not proceed. There is part of you that's going to have to accept, like what Ryan is saying, that you have to make a choice, and so do they. But also, eventually, if you keep going on your path, people will notice all of it. Even if they would want to ignore it, they will notice the changes. Even if you're going to be angry for a bit instead of just sad. And eventually, in due time, they're going to see your growth. And a lot of people don't want to be left behind. And when they see someone change and grow, some people are competitive. And I used to want to judge that about people, but anything that'll help people change and grow is a good thing. But like, if you get better, I'm not saying you have to convince them that you are, but if you start healing from your pain, if they start seeing you being sillier with people and connecting with people more and having joy in your life, there are going to be people that don't want to miss out. Some people just have FOMO. Some people are competitive, and some people just don't want to lose. And, you could judge their motivations if you want, but if they actually start changing because you changed, that can happen. That is a reality. That's part. I'm not saying that's exactly how it happened with me, but eventually when I first started going, because I've gone to therapy a few times, I need to go back. But when I first started going, my family saw changes in me, and then not that they were all competitive, but it made all of them think about why they haven't done anything like that.
Right.
And if it's good for them. Some people in reality will try to punish you for going because they feel bad because they see you growing. And that is not on you. And even if they take it out on you, it's not on you. But people will see that and want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Also.
I will say, I do love the idea of two siblings competing for mental stability. Like, they're like, nah, I totally reached that epiphany first. Oh, oh yeah, well remember when I tried ayahuasca and I saw God? Like it just gets or like imagine like they're competing and they think one of them see Mom, he's using psychedelics.
Ma, he beat me to ego death. But it's silly, but
Sorry, I pictured like one of them reaches the ethereal plane where he meditates and is able to separate from his body just to give his brother a wet willy in his sleep. Like a ghost wet willy.
he's like, I think God gave me a wet willy last night.
Oh, that's funny.
Monster Pro asks, how do you feel about generational trauma, and what do you think are some ways one can sort of find ways to help with that?
Well, I feel like we kind of dove into it off the bat with that. So this will be a lot of reiterating.
The simple answer is watching Encanto, but the more detailed one, right?
Right. Encanto is like such a good... Oh, that movie is so good at representing that.
It's so true.
I can't get over it.
I can't get... Like, seriously, it's a joke, but also, if you haven't, watch Encanto. Like,
I watched that movie 5 days in a row. And I cried every time.
We watched it.
I showed a different family member every time. Like, this is how we are. Fix it.
Do you want to be the grandma for the rest of your life? Watching Encanto a few times, cry every time or whatever. But kind of what we touched on at the beginning and just after this other question,
right,
is you do not give yourself grace and give other people grace. And I mean that you're all going to mess up and you are messed up. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way. We are. And that's part of life anyway. Give yourself grace and them some grace. You don't have to suffer their abuse. But if people are growing, give them that opportunity. Have, like you said, patience.
right.
And if you do that, and the more people start to face things and you keep giving them grace, eventually part of the reason people don't face any of this is because they're terrified. And that doesn't excuse their abusive behavior. It doesn't excuse anyone's abusive behavior. But if they start to see, if you make them doubt their doubts, because you'll have this story in your head at your worst that they don't care or they are going to hurt me. But if you're a person in the family that allows the mistakes to occur as long as you want to face them and own them and grow, eventually everyone else starts to see that you're not trying to punish people. You just want them to get better.
Yeah, and that brought me to a thought that was related to what you were saying. I know I made it a joke, but genuinely, but I feel like why people feel competitive in that sort is... for some people, because this is all they know, they get good at it. So when you get good at the path that you were taught, even if you didn't agree with it, even if deep down you knew like something didn't feel right, you still got successful at the path that you were taught was the best way to do it.
Absolutely.
And because of that, when you see someone else in your family who is doing a different path and succeeding in their own right with that alternative path, there's that spark in you that feels a little like jealous, like, well, why couldn't I have done that then? Or like, well, why is that? Why do I have to change all of a sudden? I've gone so far with this path. It feels so hard to turn back from this now because I'm already like at this point in it.
Yeah.
And then it's like that. Oh, the nerd's gonna come out in me. But it starts with fear, and fear leads to anger. Anger
leads to the dark side.
To hatred.
Oh.
And hatred to generational trauma it leads.
I can't.
Do or do not. Go to therapy. Okay, what's the next one?
Okay, I think this is the last question because you guys already touched on the last thing that was written. But Edric Zena, I believe is how it's pronounced, says, and this is kind of more of a statement question. Are we suffering more from mental health due to mental illness? Or are we just poorer than earlier generations, and that stress and fear is causing mental fatigue, depression, and anxiety? Suffering not just from alienation under capitalism, but also being crushed by debt and poverty.
This is an interesting thing that I've come across lately. I've seen different takes on this debate. And I will say that definitely the surmounting amount of things to be anxious about has increased. There's no way that it couldn't have increased for one specific reason that is like so simple to understand, but sometimes older, like boomers specifically, and that got lost in translation. Boomers relate to people like from the baby boom. That's what that reference is. Like that old generation and up until like Gen X, I think, is what boomers are. But it's the concept that like the world has expanded since then. Like even now, since the 80s, certain countries don't exist anymore and new countries have taken their place. Like our understanding of the universe as a concept has expanded in every form, not only the physical, but theological, like metaphysical. There's no way when we gain more information that it hasn't changed the situation.
Yeah, like I don't even know if Pluto's a planet anymore. Like it's
a giant space moon rock. There's like theories that might be a moon of Neptune after a while.
Oh, really?
That it might just get sucked in because they get close to each other every like 200 years or something. Separate from that, I do also see like a weird growing debate point that a lot of the newfound statistics in neurodivergency and mental health disorders isn't real, that it's just a side effect of this growing infliction on humanity, that because we're so stressed out, because there's so much more to deal with, that people just are showing more symptoms of these diseases that don't really exist. And I'll be honest, that shit's frustrating.
Yeah.
Because this is another thing that I have to explain, especially to my family, is like, it's not new. We just know what to call it now.
Yeah. But it's the same argument of like, hey, if you go to the doctor, they're going to find something wrong with you.
Yeah.
They're like, but if you don't go,
you're going to miss what might actually be wrong with you.
It's the same logic. It's the same fear logic of not wanting to face anything.
Yeah, like even just specifically with autism, because this is a conversation I've had with my dad, but also just like every like adult male Latino that I've met that's like over 45, where they always tell me when I'm explaining they're always interested genuinely, and we have a genuine, it's never like an angry debate, but then I do my spiel and they always end it the exact same way. No matter how far we got into the conversation, they always end it like this. Yeah, when I was a kid, we just called it being weird. And it's like, yeah, but now you know that that's not what you call it. It's autism. It's like, yeah, it's that thing's always existed. You just didn't have a name for it yet. You know what I mean? Like the orange didn't always have that name because people didn't know the orange existed. Did you know that?
No.
Like the color orange had a different name before the fruit was discovered. And the fruit, I believe, was named after its discoverer.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like shit like that's literally just like how society has evolved as a concept. Is like things were always there. We just didn't know they were there.
Yeah.
So until we discovered it, it didn't exist to us. That doesn't mean it didn't exist. That just means we didn't know it was there. You know what I mean?
That's what's up.
Like my mom's not in this room right now. That doesn't mean she doesn't exist. Hi, Mom.
She'll exist in the comment section. That's
she
for
pops
sure.
up behind me like, "What are you talking shit?" and smacks me. It's so funny. My mom is like that chancla kind of a mom, but she never wore chanclas.
Really?
Or like
the threat was always there?
Yeah, like she didn't wear like the foam like thick chanclas, so that's just not what she used.
Yeah.
She was a good mom, I swear.
Just real quick as a side, did you guys ever get like, because you know the stereotype is that she throws a sandal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you ever get hit with anything like that? A shoe or some type of close object? That
No,
she would grab?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
my mom did discipline me. It's just like she wasn't a chocolate wearing kind of mom.
My question really was, what was the worst thing you ever got hit with?
You don't want those answers.
All right. My my record is a D battery. I took a D battery to the back.
Damn.
From across the hall. My mom was a thrower.
I do remember. I do remember this story. My dad never hit me with this belt, but I don't know if you experience this as well. But there's always two belts to threaten you with. There's the one he'll actually use, and then there's the one that's supposed to hurt more. Do you guys know about this?
I had a situation like that, but it wasn't the belt; it was the paddle.
Right.
Okay.
So I have found like few other Latinos that, like, my dad had his belt that he owned that he would use, and then for some reason a lot of Mexican fathers I know have like one belt that's like their dad's old like ranchero belt, like the kind of ranch hand wears, and it has double the holes.
That's hilarious.
Because it matched a giant belt buckle. And he never used it on me, but he would constantly explain why if he had to use it on me, it's going to hurt more. And it's because double holes makes it go through the air. He was explaining the aerodynamics of this fucking belt and saying like it's also like because it has less surface area, it's more concentrated. And I'm like, how are you? You did not go. My dad, I'm gonna admit this. Like my dad, like dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
How is he always a physical? You know what I mean? Like every Latino parent is a fucking Stephen Hawking when it comes to disciplining their child.
Child abuse.
Right.
Hey, I may not have passed physics, but I will physically abuse you.
The physics of this belt passing through you. I sounded like Yoda again.
I thought you were talking about the belt that made the belt they hit you with. I thought that's what you were talking about. And the belt that made the best snapping sound to threaten you
like
with.
there's always, that's what I'm saying. There's always one that they'll actually hit you with. And then there's always one that's just a better threat.
Yeah, because you'd get those like thick belts that when you know how you bunch it together and you pull to snap the sound, and it would just go sass, and it would just pierce the house. Like that was a good warning shot. A shot across the bow.
The funny thing about that is the snap specifically didn't work on me because I'm autistic, and that became one of my stems because I liked making the snap.
I loved making, despite being hit with a belt, I love that noise.
It's the best noise in the world.
Yeah.
That and like when you wiggle like a giant piece of plastic or metal.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. When you break the rod off the curtains, you swing that plastic around, and then eventually you hit each other and cry. Yeah, that was the best.
Best childhood trauma. Choice childhood trauma. If I had to pick any of it to keep, the ones that made noise.
Yeah, at least be a little entertained.
A couple of notes. Pluto, officially classified as a dwarf planet.
Dwarf planet.
So Randy Newman hates the shit out of that.
Yeah. Little planet's got no business.
No moons and no orbit.
And I couldn't find anything about oranges being named after somebody named Orange or
I just
a color
remember
or anything. It's a Sanskrit word, naranj. And it's in trade, people just dropped the N, and it just became orange.
Oh, wow.
Naranja.
Yeah, I think that like the Latin word came first, and then
Sanskrit. It's coming from a Sanskrit word.
But what I remember, I mean, I could be wrong. I'll have to go. You know what I mean? Like, I know a lot of facts, but sometimes I need to be corrected, and I'll accept that.
I was just looking
Dominic. Oh.
Maybe we get like a disapproving Dominic face put up sometimes.
Just him going.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's like the most we can get out of it. That was a good conversation.
I think so.
A lot of it is just. Well, I did want to put it in this framing of like, regardless of what situation you're in, the biggest component about it, as far as breaking that generational chain, is simply the understanding that you need to focus on. You need to look at it as your personal journey first, before you acknowledge that it's part of the journey that you all go through together. Because when you put your identity as a family member above your identity as an individual, that's what leads to you. You're literally hiding yourself from yourself.
Yeah. And it's like, you deserve that anyway. We're all going to go back like we have a strong culture and attachment to family, so we don't need to practice that.
Yeah.
We need to practice working on ourselves. And if you still, after working on yourself, and you have the time and energy and resources to help your family, that is a decision you'll be ready to make when you're better, not while you're injured. It's silly. Athletes don't keep playing when they're injured because the team is better than they are. The team is better when they're better.
I love that analogy. I think it's been a good episode. I do, because we forgot to do it last week, want to address one more thing from the Discord. Somebody left us a riddle. And I love this comment. I believe it was Imperium Sloth, because a lot of people who remember Ricky remember him from specifically the episode where you started as yourself and then you ended as, and then your friend Chicano Batman showed up.
Yeah.
But the thing people remember right away is that Chicano Batman showed up.
Yeah.
And so this person started commenting with the implication that Chicano Batman would be on screen. Realized that might not have it happen, and instead of editing the comment as a whole, just put at the end, wait, is he even going to be in Batman costume? Never mind.
Yeah. If not,
I love
ignore
that
those
energy.
questions.
I love it.
But regardless, I love riddles. You hit us with it.
I can be cracked. I can be made. I can be told. I can be played. What am I?
A code. I just realized we probably should have gotten the answers from it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's
Cracked,
it.
played,
Made, cracked, code sounds right.
code.
Did you Google these? That was fast.
I want to see.
When is a secret suddenly a rumor? When is a rumor suddenly a fact?
I know the secret one. It's like when you share it. When a secret is a rumor when more than two people know it. A rumor is a fact when everyone knows it.
But is that what's
Even
the
that
riddle?
rhymes. I don't know. I'm really bad at this.
Something like that.
Yeah, we don't have the answers. So
Yeah, it's just like, well, Imperium Sloth, comment the answers in the Discord.
Let us know if we got it right,
on the
Imperium.
YouTube video.
I enjoyed it regardless. Thank you for that. That was
I
fun.
always love a riddle, even if I'm bad at them.
Dude, my favorite, that reminded me of this dumb Batman meme, but it's Riddler, like, riddle me this, Batman.
Okay.
What has 3 holes or what's full of holes and you throw it down in an alley? And he goes, my parents? And he goes, oh my God, no, it's a bowling ball. I'm
come
so
on.
sorry.
Oh, God.
So when is a secret suddenly a rumor? When is a rumor suddenly a fact? When the proper question finally gets asked.
Huh. Okay. I mean, I get it.
It's
just not satisfying of an answer.
Would a woodchuck chuck?
If a woodchuck could
It
chuck
kind of is like
7.
No, but it reminded me of that because one of the obnoxious answers is a woodchuck would chuck as much wood as a woodchuck could.
Yeah.
If a woodchuck could chuck wood. Like, how much wood do you think a woodchuck can chuck? I don't know. As much as he can.
Yeah. I mean, we all have limits.
Well, I think that's been a good episode. Thank you for hanging out with us. If you've made it this far, tell us what's your favorite part of Encanto. Mine is the spackle guy. I make the spackle. Make sure to like and subscribe, hit that notification so you can get the next episodes on time. Follow us at Un Poquito Pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, even here. You can find the links to follow us individually in the bio, in the description, all that jazz. And as always, from us at Un Poquito, don't fly.